You are Karoly Sebes?
I am Dr. Karoly Sebes.
Of Sanders Court, Copley Green, near Fulchester?
Yes?
Karoly Sebes, you stand here indicted on 2 counts. On the first count, you are charged with murder, in that on a date between the 31st of May, 1973, and the 14th of August, 1973, you murdered Joseph Draper. To that count, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the second count, you are charged with manslaughter, in that on a date between the 31st of May, 1973, and the 14th of August, 1973, you unlawfully killed Joseph Draper. To that count, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
This whole thing is ludicrous.
To the second count, how do you plead?
Answer the question, Mr. Sebes.
Dr. Sebes.
Very well. Dr. Sebes, answer the question.
Not guilty.
I call Sergeant Condry of the Fulchester Police.
Sergeant Condry, please.
Sergeant Condry, Fulchester Constabulary.
And how long have you been a police officer, Sergeant?
21 years, sir.
Will you please tell the court what happened on the evening of the 14th of August, 1973?
If I may refer to my notes, my lord.
When did you write them up?
As soon as I got back to the station, within about 1 hour.
Very well.
On the 14th of August, 1973, I was on Panda patrol in the northeast district of Fulchester. At 18:27 hours, I received instructions to proceed to Sanders Court, Copley Green. I arrived at Sanders Court at 18:34 hours.
And what did you find when you got there?
I found Sister Mary Magdalene standing by the front door. She was very agitated. She stated she had come to visit her uncle and could get no reply from the house. I effected an entry by breaking a glass panel in the front door.
Sergeant, did you not check the lady's identity? Did you not look around? Make further investigations as to the possibility of the house being empty?
There was no need, sir.
Would you explain that, please, Sergeant?
I was beat constable at Copley Green for 4 years. I knew Sister Mary Magdalene, or Miss Draper as she was known before she went in the convent. I also knew that her uncle, Joseph Draper, was a chronic invalid who never left the house.
Yes, I see. Please go on.
Sister Mary Magdalene and I went straight to the master bedroom. Everything in the room was thick with dust and the bed was unmade. There was no sign of Mr. Draper. I immediately notified police headquarters and commenced a thorough search of the house.
And what was the result of that search?
To the basement. There were 3 cellars, one of which was locked.
Sergeant, do you have to rely so absolutely on your notes?
I'm sorry, my lord, but I want to make sure I get it right.
Well, I suppose if no one objects. Very well.
I forced the door. Inside this cellar, there was a large deep-freeze cabinet with a transparent plastic top. Inside the cabinet, I saw the body of Joseph Draper.
What action did you take?
I opened the cabinet and saw that the man was dead. I notified headquarters, and the police surgeon arrived at 2000 hours.
Yes.
He confirmed that life was extinct.
We shall be hearing from the police surgeon in due course, my lord. Now tell me, Sergeant Condry, did anything else occur while the police surgeon was making his examination?
Yes, sir. The prisoner, Sebes, burst into the cellar.
What was his manner?
He was very angry, furious.
Did he say anything?
Yes, sir. He said, "You bloody fool, you've killed him."
You bloody fool, you've killed him. Well, what did you take him to mean by that?
Mean, sir? It didn't mean anything. The man was dead when I got there.
Yes, quite. What happened next?
I said, "Who put Mr. Draper in the cabinet?" He said, "I did. Who else, you bloody fool?" I asked him to accompany me to the station. He was cautioned and charged at 23:30 hours. He made no reply and declined to make a statement.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Sergeant Condry, you're an experienced police officer.
21 years, sir.
Yes, 21 years. 4 of which were spent as beat constable at Copley Green.
Yes, sir.
And you knew Joseph Draper?
Yes, sir.
And Miss Draper?
Yes, sir.
And Dr. Sebes?
Oh, aye. I knew him all right.
Do I detect a note of bitterness in your voice, Sergeant? Sergeant, is it not a fact that as a result of complaints, a number of complaints laid against you by Dr. Sebes, you were transferred from the Copley Green precinct to the country district of King's Camber, where you languished for 9 years?
He had it in for me.
But you have the last laugh, haven't you? Mere 16 years later, you're getting your own back.
In what way, Mr. O'Connor?
I'm coming to that, my lord. Now, Sergeant Condry, let us move on to the 14th of August last year, when you were on Panda patrol. Oh, incidentally, is it not unusual for a sergeant to be on Pandas?
We were very badly undermanned at the station. There was no one else available.
Oh, I see. When there's no one else, send for Sergeant Condry.
Well, I'm very experienced. in
Yes,
the
we know,
operation.
Sergeant. You are a very experienced police officer. Now, tell me, what did you find when you arrived at Sanders Court? No, not from your notebook, Sergeant. From your memory, if you don't mind. Well, did you knock on the door yourself? Did you ring the bell? Was the bell working properly? Well, come on, Sergeant. You're a very experienced police officer. It is normal procedure.
Oh, Miss Draper, Sister Mary Magdalene told me that...
Oh, yes, of course, Sergeant. And you knew her, so that was all right. Very well. Let's move on to the master bedroom. No, don't bother, Sergeant. Let me read from your notes. Everything in the room was thick with dust and the bed was unmade. There was no sign of Mr. Draper. Tell me, if Mr. Draper had been on holiday, would you have noticed anything different?
He never went on holiday, ever. He was in the cellar. I found his body.
So you did, subsequently. In a deep freeze cabinet, you said.
Yes, sir.
Would you describe the cellar to us? Oh dear, you don't seem to have any notes on this. Well, let me help you. Was it an ordinary cellar? Dank? Cobwebbed? Lots of discarded crates and old bottles?
No. It was clean.
Clean? Wasn't it in fact white-tiled, scrubbed, spotless?
Yes.
Might one even say sterile, as in a medical laboratory? Well, Sergeant?
Yes, you could say that, I suppose.
And this deep freeze cabinet, was there anything out of the ordinary about that?
It was just a deep freeze.
Just a deep freeze. Sergeant, would you look at a photograph of what you call just a deep freeze, please?
Mr. Harbistay, have you seen this?
The photograph is agreed evidence, my lord.
Exhibit 1, my lord. Now, just look at that photograph, Sergeant. Is that what you found in the cellar?
Yes.
And do you still refer to it as just a deep freeze?
There was a body in it. A dead body.
How'd you know he was dead?
The police surgeon said he was dead.
Yes, 40 minutes later.
I could see he was dead.
Well, of course, Sergeant, we know you are a very experienced police officer, but tell me, in your 21 years on the force, how many murder investigations have you been actively involved in? Actively involved, mind you. Well, were there any in your 4 years on the beat at Copley Green?
No, sir.
During your 9 years at King's Camber?
No, sir.
Well, in your 8 years at Fulchester, your duties have been almost entirely at the station desk. So we can hardly consider your on-the-spot instant recognition of a corpus delicti as expert testimony, can we?
I tried for pulse and breathing. There wasn't any.
Sergeant, would you agree that the prime rule on the discovery of a body in admittedly unusual circumstances is that nothing should be touched or moved that might destroy evidence?
Yes, but I had to see whether he was alive or not.
Yet you barged in and you broke open the cabinet. You broke the first and basic rule.
Yes, but I had no option. I had to see if he was dead.
Exactly. You opened a cabinet in which Joseph Draper, a retired merchant, was being maintained in a state of suspended animation under a process which was developed by my client, Dr. Sebes. A state from which he could have been revived at any time by my client's expert hands, until you, in your zealous pursuit of justice, destroyed the life-preserving equipment.
Well, I didn't think that there was...
No, you didn't, Sergeant. But think now. Do you now understand what my client meant when he said, "You bloody fools, you've killed him"?
Dr. Fenwick, you were called by the police to examine the body?
That is correct.
You knew the deceased?
Yes, I knew him. Not personally, of course. He wasn't a patient or anything like that. No, I knew him as a local resident. He was a bit of a legend locally, old Joe Draper. Millionaire, eccentric, you know, the sort of thing.
Yes, quite. Please proceed.
Well, I made a preliminary examination of the body and verified that life was extinct.
Were you able to make any estimation as to how long life had been extinct?
Oh, impossible. Absolutely impossible. It was the refrigeration, you see.
Could you explain how it is that refrigeration made it difficult to estimate the time of death?
Well, when life ceases under normal circumstances, certain changes take place. Rigor mortis, I suppose, is the easiest to explain. You see, the plasma in the muscle tissue will coagulate at a fairly predictable rate depending on the surrounding temperature. We even have tables all worked out to help us. So, once we've established the extent of the rigor, we can usually make a pretty educated guess.
But not in this case.
Oh, certainly not in this case. You see, the temperature in the cabinet while I was conducting the examination was only just above freezing point. Our tables don't go that low. And remember, the cabinet had been open for about 40 minutes, so the temperature must have been well below freezing point when the sergeant found the body.
Did you form any opinion as to the cause of death?
Oh, good gracious, no. Far too tricky for a simple country GP. No, this was one for the big boys. I had the body forwarded to Fulchester General for the experts to sort out.
Thank you, Dr. Fenwick.
Yep.
Dr. Fenwick, while you were waiting for the body to be removed, did you take any notice of your surroundings?
Huh? Oh, the cellar, you mean? Yes, I had a jolly good browse round.
What did you think of it?
Oh, it was fantastic. It made my little surgery look very quaint, I don't mind telling you.
Can you remember what equipment you saw?
Well, I didn't recognize half of it. Most of the stuff I did recognize I've only seen in manufacturers' catalogues. Must have cost a bomb.
Yes, well, tell us some of the stuff you did recognize.
Oh, there was an operating table, anesthetics console, ECG, EEG machines.
A moment, Dr. Fenwick. EEG, ECG. What are they?
Electrocardiograph for measuring the heart, my lord, and electroencephalograph for measuring the brain waves. The electric output of the brain cells.
I see. And these are rather advanced pieces of medical equipment.
Well, I certainly don't have them in my surgery, my lord.
Yes, I see. Thank you. Go on, please.
Oh, there was all sorts of equipment around the place. Oh, he even had a heart-lung machine. That's a machine they use for bypassing the heart during major surgery, my lord.
I'm obliged, Dr. Fenwick.
Dr. Fenwick, do you know my client?
Dr. Sebes, yes, slightly.
How slightly?
Well, I met him 2 or 3 times when he first came to this district back in 1957. He was a refugee from Hungary, you know.
And how did you meet him?
Through the Fulchester Medical Association. I was the secretary at the time. We heard that this Hungarian doctor was staying with the Drapers at Saunders Court, and I invited him to some of our meetings to see if we could help him in any way.
And did you help him in any way?
Well, no, actually.
Indeed. Why not?
He didn't seem to want any help. We offered him the choice of a number of hospital posts, but he turned them all down out of hand.
Did he give any reason?
No. I suppose he thought the jobs were beneath him.
And weren't they?
Well, he certainly was a very highly qualified physician, but, I mean, you can't expect to just stroll into a strange country and start at the top of the heap, now can you?
Did you welcome him socially?
As I said, he came to some of our meetings, and we were all rather glad when he stopped.
Why was that?
We did nothing but criticize. Everything we did was wrong, according to him. Our methods were old-fashioned. We were living in the past, according to him. You know, he actually offered to sell me an electronic stethoscope he'd invented. I mean, what would I want with an electronic stethoscope?
I take it you didn't buy it.
Why should I? I'm still using the stethoscope my father gave me on my graduation. Works all right for me now.
I'm sure it does. So, Dr. Sebes went out of your ken until the 14th of August last year, then?
That's right. Until he walked into that cellar and called me a bloody fool. The arrogance of the man.
Didn't he try to explain to you what you'd done?
He was practically incoherent with rage. He kept rambling on about suspended animation, metabolic stasis, all sorts of nonsense.
Nonsense to you, perhaps, Doctor, because it was beyond your medical experience and comprehension.
Medical nothing. It was pure science fiction.
As penicillin was in the 1930s, Dr. Fenwick, as kidney dialysis was in the 1940s, as an open-heart surgery was in the 1950s. That will be all, Dr. Fenwick.
Does your lordship have any further questions?
No. Very well, thank you, Dr. Fenwick. You may go.
Thank you, my lord.
I call Professor Alistair Sunters.
Professor Alistair Sunters, please.
What is your religion?
Church of Scotland.
Take the Bible in your right hand and read aloud the words on this card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Professor Alistair Sunters?
I am.
And where do you live?
17 Devonshire Crescent, Fulchester.
Would you recite your qualifications to us, please?
MB-CHB Glasgow, Fellow of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, Dean of the Faculty at Fulchester Medical School, and Head of the Cryosurgery Unit at Fulchester General Hospital.
Yes, thank you, Professor. Now, cryosurgery, what precisely is that?
Cryosurgery, cryo is merely a prefix which means low temperature. Cryosurgery is a field of medicine in which surgical operations are carried out while the body temperature of the patient is maintained at a considerably lower level than normal.
What are the advantages of cryosurgery over the more orthodox surgical procedures?
Well, reduction of the body temperatures lowers the metabolic rates, thus decreasing the electrical and chemical activity of the cells, particularly the brain cells, so that the patient has much less chance of suffering shock from the effects on the system of major surgery. The advantages are most marked in cases where massive surgery is required, for instance, in open heart surgery, where post-operative shock is one of the greatest dangers.
What sort of temperatures are involved in cryosurgery?
Well, if we take as a starting point the normal core temperature of 37 degrees centigrade...
Professor Sunters, core temperature.
The internal body temperature, my lord, as opposed to the skin temperature.
So core temperature is the temperature the doctor takes when he puts a thermometer into the patient's mouth.
Or wherever, my lord.
Yes, quite. Carry on, please.
Well, starting with the core temperature of 37 degrees centigrade, we are now able, at our present level of knowledge and technology, to reduce that temperature to 15 degrees centigrade.
15 degrees centigrade. But 15 degrees centigrade, Professor, is a temperature that we might encounter on any pleasant spring afternoon, even in this country.
I can assure your lordship that in the context of the interior of the human body, it is the equivalent of an Arctic waste.
Really? Oh, I do not doubt you, Professor Sunters, but I must confess I find it very hard to grasp.
Perhaps if I could describe the journey to this cryogenic Valhalla, my lord.
Yes, indeed, if you think it will help us to understand the subject.
Well, at 37 degrees centigrade, the body is normal. Now, as we reduce the temperature of the skin, the core temperature falls much more slowly, as the heart and circulation struggle to maintain the temperature at which they work best. Now, shivering and muscular spasm are the outward signs of this internal struggle, accompanied by vasoconstriction of the surface vessels. Oh, I beg your pardon, my lord. The cells and vessels near the skin contract to try to keep the heat in.
I see.
We counteract this by the use of drugs, chlorpromazine, halothane, ether, which dilate, expand the vessels, and allow the body heat to escape more readily. And so the core temperature comes steadily down until we encounter the first serious obstacle between 28 and 30 degrees.
And what is that first serious obstacle?
Between 28 and 30 degrees centigrade, my lord, the heart stops.
Between 28 and 30 degrees, the heart stops.
Yes, my lord.
That is a far cry from 15 degrees centigrade.
Indeed it is, my lord.
Yes, well, I'm beginning to understand the metaphor that you used, Professor Sunters. Right, proceed, Mr. Harvester.
Thank you, my lord. You were saying, Professor, that at this juncture the heart stops.
No.
I beg your pardon?
At that temperature, the heart would stop, but in practice, we would have stopped the heart already by means of a heart-lung bypass.
I see. So the patient is now on artificial circulation.
And since we are now in full control of the circulation, we are able to reduce the temperature much more rapidly.
Bringing it down, in fact, to 15 degrees. Why 15?
At 15 degrees, the body's metabolism requires only minimum amounts of oxygen and glucose to keep the brain cells from shutting down completely. But under 15 degrees, the supply of oxygen and glucose falls below even that required minimum.
Could you put that more simply for us, Professor?
Yes, if we take the patient below 15 degrees centigrade, we cannot bring him back.
Now, Professor Sunters, if we go back to August of last year, did you carry out a post-mortem examination on the body of Joseph Draper?
I did.
Do you often do post-mortems?
Oh, very seldom. But in the circumstances of this case, it was felt that my specialized knowledge was required.
And by specialized knowledge, you mean, of course, your skill in and experience of cryogenics. Did you discover the cause of death?
Yes.
And what was the cause of death?
Death was due to cardiac arrest resulting from hypothermia. The body had been subjected to abnormally low temperatures.
Thank you, Professor.
Professor Sunters, how would you define death?
Reluctantly.
I beg your pardon?
Oh, it used to be easy enough. The heart stopped beating, the patient stopped breathing, and that was an end to it. But with modern technology, we can overcome the visible signs of death. Although whether in some cases it can be called life is another question entirely.
I take your point, Professor Sunters, but if you were forced to give a definition, what would your answer be?
Then I would say it was the irreversible cessation of all bodily functions, physical, neural, and chemical. But I dare say you could find eminent authorities who would quibble.
The irreversible cessation of all bodily functions, physical, neural, and chemical. That seems to me a perfectly adequate definition.
But then you are not an eminent authority.
Well, I don't suppose the members of the jury are either, Professor. But I'm quite sure we laymen are quite happy with your definition. Now, let's go back to last August, shall we? Did you, in the course of your investigations, visit the room in which the body of Joseph Draper was found?
I did.
And what did you think of it?
It was quite remarkable.
It was quite remarkable. It was, in fact, a superbly equipped medical research laboratory where engineering and the appointments were particularly consistent with serious and advanced research into the fields of low-temperature medicine.
It was.
I'd like you to look at this photograph, please. Exhibit 1. Now, Professor, is that the laboratory you examined at Sanders Court?
It is.
Yes, you can see the heart-lung machine.
Yes.
The function monitors.
Yes.
The blood refrigeration unit.
Yes.
Deep refrigeration unit.
Yes.
Anesthetic console.
Yes.
Instrument tray.
Yes.
Sterilizers.
Yes.
Yes. Now, is there anything missing from that laboratory which is essential to the efficient control of reduction of human body temperature under medical conditions?
Yes.
I beg your pardon? What's that?
3 experienced theatre nurses, 2 highly skilled theatre technicians, 2 assistant surgeons, and a qualified anaesthetist.
Yes, Professor. Perhaps under perfect operating theatre conditions.
I would consider it foolhardy to attempt the process under any other conditions.
The case of the Queen against Sebes will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. The body of Joseph Draper was found in a deep freeze cabinet in the cellar of his home, Sanders Court, Copley Green, near Fulchester. Professor Sunters, head of the low-temperature surgery unit at Fulchester General Hospital, has just given evidence that death was due to hypothermia, the body having been subjected to abnormally low temperatures. Dr. Karoly Sebes, a refugee from the Hungarian uprising of 1957, is accused of bringing about that death.
Professor Sunters, you have the photograph of Dr. Sebes's laboratory. Leaving aside for the moment the question of staffing, is there any piece of equipment missing from that room that will be essential in the process under discussion?
No.
Is there any piece of equipment in that setup which you do not usually associate with the type of work you carry out in your own theatre?
I presume you're referring to the extra oxygen pump and the airtight seal between the canopy and the cabinet.
I am indeed, Professor Sunters. Have you any idea as to their function?
I should imagine they are there to create a hyperbaric chamber within the cabinet. That is, a chamber in which the atmospheric pressure could be regulated.
And what would be the point in that?
Well, one of the dangers in low-temperature medicine is the reduction of oxygen in the blood and brain cells. A hyperbaric chamber would force extra oxygen into the cells.
Thereby increasing the patient's chances of sustaining life.
In general terms, yes.
But you don't use this equipment in your own theatre?
For the very simple reason that if the patient is sealed in a hyperbaric chamber, we cannot get at him to operate.
But he would be able to withstand even lower temperatures than the 15-degree limit that you've set yourself.
Well, yes,
Professor Sunters, are you acquainted with the concept of cryogenically induced suspended animation?
As a concept, yes. As a reality, no.
Well, let us discuss the concept then, shall we? The idea behind it is quite simple, is it not? If a person is suffering from a disease for which medical science has no cure, he is placed in suspended animation until such time as medical knowledge catches up and with his affliction, and then he is revived and treated. Is that not so?
That is the basic concept, yes.
There is a considerable amount of research into this matter going on at the moment, particularly in the United States of America.
Work is being done in this field. I would not call it considerable.
Wouldn't you, Professor Sunters? Are you not aware that cryogenic vaults have already been established in various parts of the United States, and already many of these are occupied?
I am aware that cryogenic vaults are in use. I have not yet heard of anyone who has been successfully revived.
It is your opinion, then, that such revival is impossible?
In the light of our present knowledge, yes.
In the light of your present knowledge, Professor, which my client will supplement before he leaves this court. Now, if we could go to your post-mortem report. Cardiac arrest resulting from hypothermia. The body has been subjected to abnormally low temperatures. That is what you said, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, well, can you give the court some idea as to how this happens, please?
Well, as I explained earlier, between 28 and 30 degrees centigrade, the heart stops.
Oh, a momentary digression, Professor. When you were examining the body of Joseph Draper, did you notice anything untoward?
In what way?
Well, any evidence of surgical attention?
Yes, there were cannulae. That is, small lengths of plastic tubing, two of them. One leading from the femoral artery, the other into the femoral vein.
And what would be the normal purpose of such tubing?
They could have many purposes.
Oh, please, Professor, isn't the most likely purpose to facilitate connection to a heart-lung machine, as in the photograph?
Yes, indeed.
Therefore, we can take it that Joseph Draper did not die when the temperature reached 28 or 30 degrees centigrade.
No, of course not.
Right. Let's go a little further along the road to the cryogenic Valhalla, to use your own expression. What happens at 15 degrees?
This, in my opinion, is the area in which death occurred. You see, the crucial point here is the acidity of the blood. Normally, the pH factor in the blood, that is, the amount of acidity, is 7.38. Now, with the minimal amounts of oxygen and glucose available at this low temperature, acidosis takes place. The pH drops, and within a very short space of time, it is fatally toxic.
But wouldn't the hyperbaric chamber give more oxygen into the blood?
It might increase the limit marginally down to, say, 10 degrees.
5 degrees?
I have no experience of such conditions, but I doubt it. There are other factors.
Such as?
Oh, they're not important. The important thing is the blood pH. Normal is 7.38. I measured the blood pH at the post-mortem. It was 6.9. Now, that is lethal. Anything that happened after that is of no significance.
Now, Professor, I want you to listen carefully. Suppose a human body is taken down to 15 degrees and the blood factor is being maintained at 7.38. Suppose that that body can be almost instantaneously brought to a sub-zero temperature. Would the pH factor change?
No. At sub-zero temperatures, all chemical action would be arrested.
Yes, but when the refrigeration was removed and the body temperature started to rise again, what would happen to the pH factor then?
Once above freezing point, acidosis will begin to take place.
And what was the temperature of the body when you conducted your post-mortem?
Normal for a dead body on an examination table.
And you found a blood pH of 6.9. Now, Professor, did the acidosis take place when the body temperature was falling or when the body temperature was rising? As, for instance, when the cryogenic unit was prematurely opened by Sergeant Condry.
What? No, no. It had to be when the temperature was falling.
Is that your knowledge and experience talking, Professor? Or your reluctance to accept that this man has done more on his own than you and your highly skilled team have managed in all your years of research?
My knowledge and experience accumulated over a great many years.
Thank you, Professor.
You wish to re-examine, Mr. Harvester?
Yes, just one question, my lord. Professor Santos, is there any doubt at all in your mind that Joseph Draper died as a result of being subjected to abnormally low temperatures?
None whatsoever.
Thank you, Professor Santos. You may leave the court if you so wish.
Thank you, my lord.
I call Sister Mary Magdalene.
Sister Mary Magdalene, please.
Take the Bible in your right hand and read aloud the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Margaret Sarah Draper, now known as Sister Mary Magdalene of the Holy Child.
I am.
You are a member of an enclosed order of Carmelites, and you live at the Carmelite Monastery of St. John of the Cross at Merston.
Yes.
And how long have you been a member of that order?
I entered the Carmelite Monastery as a postulant in 1961 and took my final vows in 1970.
Now, will you tell us, please, of your visit to Sanders Court on the 14th of August last year?
A moment, Mr. Harvester. Sister Mary Magdalene, as I understand it, you are a member of an enclosed order. Was it not unusual for you to be visiting the outside world?
Special dispensation can be granted in exceptional circumstances, and there was cause for concern about Uncle Joseph. He had no friends or living relatives apart from me.
And presumably you had to get another special dispensation to be with us here today.
No, my lord. The temporal authority must be obeyed.
I see. Thank you. Well, Mr. Harvester.
My lord, perhaps we should clear up this question of cause for concern. Why were you concerned about your uncle?
On the 1st of every month since I entered the monastery, I received a letter from Uncle Joseph. On the 1st of June last year, I didn't.
And this caused your concern?
Not really. There could have been many reasons for this. The letter may have been lost in the post. I wrote to my uncle and told him I hadn't received the letter and suggested he looked into the matter.
And what was the result of your letter?
Well, I didn't expect a reply until July the 1st. My uncle was a man of habit.
And did you receive a reply on July the 1st?
No.
What was your reaction to that?
Well, at first I thought he must have died, but then I realized that as his next of kin I would have been informed. And then I thought perhaps he was seriously ill, but I felt sure that if he was close to death he would have sent for me.
So what did you do?
We prayed for him.
You were now getting concerned?
Concerned, yes, but content to leave him in the hands of God.
And when did you feel that human intervention was necessary?
On August the 1st I received a letter.
Was the letter signed by your uncle?
It did not look like his usual signature.
May she be shown exhibit number 2, please? Was that the letter?
Yes.
My lord, it may expedite matters if I tell the court it is not disputed that my client wrote this letter.
Sister Mary Magdalene, in spite of your concern, you did not visit Sanders Court until the 14th. Why was that?
Well, I still could not be sure that anything was wrong. A sick old man may not be able to hold a pen properly. And then we were starting a novena on the 3rd.
A novena?
It is 9 days of special prayer, my lord. We had decided at the monastery to make a novena for peace in Ireland.
But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have had much effect.
If prayer worked every time, my lord, we would soon be taking Almighty God for granted.
Quite. Proceed, Mr. Harvestead.
So when you'd finished your novena, what did you do?
I went to see our mother.
That's the Reverend Mother.
Yes, I told her of my fears for my uncle, and she decided that a request should be made to the bishop for leave to visit him.
I see, which brings us and you to Sanders Court on the 14th of August. Tell us what happened.
I rang the front doorbell and got no reply. I knew my uncle would never leave the house, even when he was not ill.
Yes, but if he were ill and confined to bed, that would have explained why you got no reply.
No, my uncle had a pathological dread of being left alone during illness. When I lived at the house, if he caught so much as a cold, I had to sleep on a camp bed in his room. I felt sure that if he were seriously ill, there would have been somebody with him. So I went to the phone box on the corner and called the police.
How long have you known the accused?
17 years.
How did you first come to know him?
It was in 1957, just after the Hungarian uprising. There was an organisation in Fulchester that gave assistance to refugees. I offered to help. They introduced us. I persuaded my uncle to allow Dr. Sebes to live at Sanders Court.
You persuaded your uncle. Do we take it then that he was rather reluctant?
At first, yes, until he found out that Dr. Sebes was a doctor of medicine. My uncle was always preoccupied with his own health. I think the thought of having a medical man at his beck and call rather appealed to him. My uncle was an old man even then, with an old man's fear of dying. Dr. Sebes was always talking about the medicine of the future, about revolutionary new ideas that were being stifled by the medical profession in this country. He discussed the possibilities of longevity, the arrest of old age, rejuvenation techniques, and even, God forbid the blasphemy, the eventual immortality of the body.
And did your uncle believe him?
Every word. By the time I entered the monastery in 1961, my uncle was totally under the domination of that man.
Thank you, Sister Mary Magdalene.
Sister Mary Magdalene, you say your uncle was under the total domination of this evil man.
I did not say he was an evil man. That is for God to judge.
Indeed, it's my mistake. Your uncle was under the total domination of this man.
Yes.
And yet in 1961 you left your uncle to his tender mercies.
I had been given a vacation by the grace of God. I never ceased praying for him.
So, Sister Mary Magdalene, off you went to your convent, leaving behind Dr. Sebes in full command. No qualms.
I had many qualms, but there was nothing I could do about it.
But there'll be ample opportunities for you to visit Sanders Court to see that your uncle was all right.
We're a closed order.
When you've taken your final vows and gone within the walls, yes. But as a postulant and novitiate, visits to the outside world are not impossible, are they?
No.
Well, how many times did you visit your uncle between 1961 and 1970?
None.
None? Your only living relative, and you did not visit him once during this time? Didn't you want to see him?
I would have liked very much to have seen my uncle. I had no desire to see him.
That was not always the case, was it, Sister Mary Magdalene? Well, was it, Sister Mary Magdalene?
Oh, my lord, we are concerned here with the death of Joseph Draper, not with what may or may not have been the attitude of this witness to the accused some 15 years ago.
O'Connor is entitled to elicit Sister Mary's attitude to the accused. It's relevant to her credit.
As you wish, my lord.
Very well, Mr. O'Connor.
Lord. There was a time, Sister Mary Magdalene, when you had a great desire to see Karoly Sebes. Is this not so?
I was a young and foolish girl.
In 1959, when Dr. Sebes was considering going to America, did you not offer yourself to him as an inducement to stay?
No, it wasn't like that. We were never lovers, believe me.
I didn't suggest you were, Sister Mary Magdalene, because my client didn't fancy you at all, did he? And it was from that moment on that you took an intense and bitter dislike to him, perhaps even a loathing.
My lord, I really must protest. This would seem to me to be nothing more than an attempt to smear this good lady's name and reputation. It can have nothing to do with this trial.
Mr. O'Connor, you are entitled to cross-examine as to credit, but it might be kinder to start with the general rather than the particular.
Yes, my lord. Right then, Sister Mary Magdalene. You say that when you left Sanders Court in 1961 to enter the monastery of St. John of the Cross, your uncle was under the complete domination of Dr. Sebes.
Yes.
And by that time, too, you and Dr. Sebes hated each other.
I hate no one.
That's very Christian of you. But Dr. Sebes is not a Christian, is he? Did he hate you?
I don't know. He certainly behaved as if he did.
I see. Did your uncle approve of your entering this convent?
He didn't approve or disapprove. He couldn't understand.
So, off you went to your enclosure, leaving behind an uncomprehending uncle under the complete domination of this man who hated you.
If you put it like that.
And yet, dominated by a man who hated you, your uncle wrote to you on the first day of every month for 12 years. Were his letters full of bitterness and recrimination?
No.
Well, what did his letters contain, then, Sister Mary Magdalene?
Mostly local news, and always he asked me to pray for him.
And what else do these letters contain?
A cheque for £100.
Every month, for 12 years, £100. Written by a man who was under the complete domination of this man who hated you, this evil, sponging money grabber. And yet this evil money grabber stood idly by and watched nearly £15,000 trickling through his fingers.
My uncle was a very rich man.
Yes, but Dr. Sebes hated you, you say. Wouldn't he try to stop it out of spite?
Perhaps he did try.
He didn't succeed. Well, that doesn't sound like a very complete domination, does it? And then there's the question of your uncle's will. I take it you have seen it?
Yes.
Who's the sole beneficiary?
I am.
So it all goes to the order of which you are a member.
Yes, we own nothing. It all belongs to the order.
So this evil man, who abhors and detests all organized religion, couldn't get your uncle to change his will. Well, that doesn't sound like complete domination either, does it? Thank you, Sister Mary Magdalene.
Yes, Sister Mary Magdalene. Before you entered the monastery, what was your function at Sanders Court?
Apart from being a companion to my uncle, I was also his personal secretary.
So you were closely involved in your uncle's financial affairs?
I kept his accounts, made out his tax returns.
What was your uncle's financial situation in 1961?
He had an income from investments of around £65,000. His capital stood at approximately £800,000.
Yes. Has the estate been wound up yet?
Not yet, but the figures are nearly complete.
Now, an estate that was worth £800,000 in 1961 must be worth well over the million mark by now.
It should be.
And is it?
From the figures I have seen, it will fall considerably short of 100,000.
Thank you, Sister Mary Magdalene. Does your lordship have any further questions?
No. Thank you. You may go now, sister.
And that concludes the case for the prosecution, my lord.
I call Dr. Karoly Sebes.
What is your religion?
Scientist?
You wish to affirm?
Yes.
Just read aloud the words on this card.
I, Karoly Sebes, do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Dr. Karoly Sebes.
I am.
And you live at Sanders Court, Copley Green, near Fulchester.
I did. At the moment, I'm a prisoner.
Yes, indeed, Dr. Sebes. How old are you, please?
I'm 57 years of age.
And what are your qualifications?
I graduated Doctor of Medicine in Budapest in 1941.
In 1941. Well, that would make you a doctor at the age of 23.
Actually, I was 22. I became 23 the month after my graduation.
You must have been a remarkable student, Doctor.
It was simply a matter of dedication.
How did your career progress from there, Dr. Sebes?
I served 4 years as a military surgeon with the Hungarian army, mainly in the Carpathian Mountains area. As a result of my experience there, particularly in the winters, I became interested in the effects of lower temperatures on the human body. I then decided it would be a worthwhile field for further research.
And was it easy to find a medical establishment where such research was being carried out?
No, there were many medical schools where they were experimenting with low temperature surgery, but only in terms of surgical expediency. It was a little more than an extended anesthesia. That was of no use to me, no use at all. You might just as well have gone to a paint factory to learn about art.
So where did you go?
In 1945, I enrolled the Institute of Advanced Technology in Debrecen, and I graduated Doctor of Science in 1948.
And your specialized subjects were?
Low temperature physics and refrigeration techniques.
So by 1948 you felt you were suitably qualified for research work in your chosen field?
I know of no one better qualified to work in this field.
And your research started in earnest?
Yes, I was given laboratory facilities at the Central Research Institute of Physics. I spent 2 years working on purely engineering side of the project. Then I managed to persuade the authorities, and I was put in charge of a research program which was studying the problems of cryogenic preservation of the living cells.
What sort of success did you have, Doctor?
Oh, considerable success with smaller experimenting animals. For instance, in one experiment, a rat was kept in a cube of ice for 7 days and then successfully revived. In another experiment, a dog was held at sub-zero temperatures for 4 days and successfully revived. But perhaps the most interesting experiment was a cat. I found by tying off some of the main neural parts...
Dr. Sebes, you'll be going more fully into the technical aspects later. In the meantime, we will stick to more general matters, please.
I beg your pardon?
Would your lordship object if Professor Sunters, as an expert witness, should sit here with the instructing solicitor?
Very well.
Thank you, my lord. Apologies to my learned friend.
Dr. Sebes, would you say that your researches carried out in Hungary in the early 1950s had completely solved all the problems of cryogenically induced suspended animation?
Certainly not. But I had opened many doors. Many of the problems which had seemed insurmountable, I had now reduced to the mere question of finding the right materials, of developing drugs which were even then available but lacking in stability, of improving the control of temperature variations. Given another 5 years of the facilities I had then, my method of suspended animation would be now an accepted medical instrument. No one would ever have to fear an incurable disease again. The patients would be cryogenically maintained until such time that the right cure had been found.
The case of the Queen against Sebes will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. The Queen against Dr. Karoly Sebes concerns the death of Joseph Draper, a rich elderly recluse whose body was found in a sub-zero atmosphere at his home, Sanders Court, near Fulchester, which he shared with the accused. The prosecution has called expert evidence to show that Draper died as a result of being subjected to abnormally low temperatures. On this, the third day, defense counsel continues his examination of the accused.
So, Dr. Sebes, you felt that you were within sight of complete success in your research into suspended animation.
Yes.
But as a result of the Hungarian People's Revolt in October 1956 and the subsequent social and political turmoil, your research work was brought to an abrupt end.
Yes.
Indeed, your own life was in great jeopardy, and eventually flight was your only recourse.
We did what we could, but it was hopeless.
I'm sure you did, Dr. Sebes, and the world admired you for it. And so in February of 1957, you arrived in Fulchester. Were you able to continue your research?
No, I wrote to every medical center where they were investigating to low-temperature surgery and offered my services. There was no program of research into suspended animation, at least nowhere near the area in which I wanted to work.
Did you receive any offer of employment?
Yes, from Professor Santos, post as senior technician in his low-temperature operating theater. He wanted me to be a plumber.
So here you were, a stranger in a strange land, with talents, skills, experience, and qualifications virtually unequaled in the Western Hemisphere, and yet you could find no one to listen to you.
One man listened.
And who was that one man?
Joseph Draper.
And how did Joseph Draper show his interest?
He told me I could stay at Sanders Court as long as I wished, and equipped for me a small laboratory in the cellar so that I can pursue some of my researches mainly into the development and synthesis of some chemicals and drugs which were necessary for my last experiment.
And how did Miss Draper take it?
Like a peasant.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, she pretended to show a great interest in my work at first, but it wasn't long before I realized she wasn't interested in my work, but in me. In 1959, there was a tentative inquiry from America about my work, and I thought of trying my luck there. Margaret suggested I marry her.
But you didn't.
I had no need of a wife.
But you didn't go to America either.
No, the inquiry fell through, and Joseph Draper offered to increase my laboratory facilities.
Were your experiments showing progress?
Oh, they were very promising. It was then that Margaret started to be obstructive.
In what way obstructive?
She tried to get her uncle to send me away. She kept telling him that I was a blasphemer, that my work was a direct insult to God, that God was the only giver of life and not man, all these obsolete religious cliches. Finally, she solved the problem for everybody by taking herself off to a convent.
And how did Joseph Draper react to the departure of his only niece?
Well, he was very angry at first. He wanted to forget her. In fact, he suggested changing his will in my favor.
But as it turned out, he didn't.
No, I persuaded him not to. I'm not interested in money for its own sake.
So life was very pleasant for you after Miss Draper had left Sanders Court. You and your benefactor lived in perfect amity, and you were able to continue your work with his financial help.
Yes, at first, but then Joseph Draper, as my work progressed, became more and more of an embarrassment. He started dropping hints.
What kind of hints?
That I should increase the range of my research, that I should leave chemical synthesis research and move on to direct experiments in suspended animation.
Did you have any idea why he should be eager for this to happen?
Yes, he was totally obsessed by the ultimate aim of suspended animation, mainly to preserve life in a person with an incurable disease until such times as medical science can cope.
What was the reason for this obsession?
Joseph Draper was suffering from an incurable disease. He wanted me to place him into suspended animation until the cure was available.
Oh, my lord, my learned friend, when cross-examining the doctor that I called, made no mention of any incurable disease.
No, my lord, but an incurable disease was present. Joseph Draper was suffering from one of the most insidious, and for him the most terrifying of all incurable diseases, old age. Dr. Sebes, when Joseph Draper first suggested suspended animation as the answer to his problems in April '64, what was your reaction?
I refused point blank.
Why?
Because in April 1964, I was in no position to put a human being to suspended animation with any hope of success. I explained to him as clearly as I could that there is still an enormous amount of research to be done, and that the equipment which I had then was hopelessly inadequate.
Did Joseph Draper accept your refusal?
No, he told me to get on with my research, that he would foot the bills.
Even though he knew it would involve substantial expenditure?
Yes, he demanded that I should perfect my suspended animation technique. So I did.
When?
By early summer 1973.
And then came the dilemma.
Yes.
Will you tell us about that dilemma, please?
The old man insisted that I should carry out my final experiment with him as the subject.
Did you try to dissuade him?
Yes.
Because you doubted your ability to carry out the process?
Oh, no, I had already held in suspended animation a large dog for 32 days and revived it very successfully.
Then what was the reason for your reluctance?
Because Joseph Draper was an old man, and there was an outside chance that his system would react differently to that of a healthy young animal.
And what caused you to overcome this reluctance?
He said he would stop backing my experiments, so I agreed.
Right. Now, what was the first step, please?
He gave me power of attorney over his affairs.
Was that his idea or yours?
His. He wanted to make sure that he would have enough to live on when he was revived. He trusted me completely.
Obviously. Now we come to the crux of the matter. When did you start the process of placing Joseph Draper in suspended animation?
On the morning of the 31st of May. I took him down first to 32 degrees and held him there for an hour just to make sure that there were no adverse effects. Then I connected my patient to the heart-lung machine and took him down to 15 degrees, using more or less the same procedures as Professor Selter would.
So you have the patient at 15 degrees. Now what?
15 degrees is a danger of acidosis. I checked the blood pH. It was normal for a while, then it started to fall. So I introduced a certain alkali of my own synthesis into the artificial circulation and brought the pH to normal and stabilized it.
Now, in his cross-examination, my learned friend will almost certainly ask, what alkali?
I will not reveal it in open court. Full technical details are contained in my papers, which will be made available to the medical profession once I am cleared of this ridiculous charge, and if they can overcome their hostility to new ideas.
Now, Dr. Sebes, an attack on the British medical profession will do little to enhance your case.
They've been against me from the start. Before I came here, I had done things they still can't even imagine. They treat me like a criminal.
Dr. Sebes, can we return to the process you were describing, please?
The longest the patient was held at 15 degrees by them is 40 minutes. I held Joseph Draper at 15 degrees for 3 hours. At the end of the time, the blood pH was 7.38. Even Professor Santos must admit that this is an indication that the patient was still alive.
And then?
Then I seal the patient in a hyperbaric chamber where I can increase the pressure to 2 atmospheres. This forces more oxygen into the blood. More oxygen is available to the brain cells, and I can reduce the temperature to 4 degrees. At 4 degrees, I check the blood pH and other measurable factors again. They are normal. Now I can reduce the temperature further 10 degrees in less than 1 second, and the patient is in a state of suspended animation to be revived at any time under expert guidance and control.
And it is your contention, Doctor, that expert guidance and control were not observed, and that as a result, Joseph Draper died.
He could have been saved by science. He was killed by ignorance.
We are waiting, Mr. Harbisdear.
I beg your pardon, my lord. Just receiving instructions. Dr. Sebes, you say that this technique of yours for placing Joseph Draper in suspended animation was carried out under the strictest surgical, scientific, laboratory conditions.
Certainly.
Indeed. And you single-handedly did the work that Professor Santos here has informed us would normally be undertaken by 8 people.
I designed my laboratory to my own specifications.
And since it was a scientific experiment, I presume that every step was noted down to record the progress of your experiment?
Of course.
So now you're doing the work of 9. How did you manage that? Did you hold the pen between your teeth?
I used a tape recorder. If I had been an English scientist, I would have probably used a quill pen.
And an English scientist would no doubt be able to produce the notes if asked. Can you do that, Dr. Sebes?
Of course.
Nevertheless, we can only have your word for it that this experiment did go so splendidly.
Joseph Draper was alive at every stage of the process.
So you say, Dr. Sebes.
You have my word as a scientist.
Your word as a scientist? Yes, and of course you are a scientist, aren't you, with superb qualifications?
Surely there can be no doubt about that.
No, indeed not. Dr. Sebes, you're a man of many parts. A doctor of medicine?
Yes.
A doctor of science?
Yes.
A brave Hungarian freedom fighter? When did you reach the West, Dr. Sebes?
I told you I came in Fulchester in February 1957.
Yes, but when did you leave Hungary?
Late in 56.
My instructions are that you arrived in Vienna on the 30th of October, 1956.
It may have been then.
My lord, how can this be relevant?
Is it relevant, Mr. Harvester?
My lord, the tanks and troops of the Soviet Union did not enter Hungary until the 1st of November, 1956. It seems odd that a brave Hungarian freedom fighter should have left his homeland 2 days previously.
Oh, perhaps. But what has it to do with the death of Joseph Draper?
I think you'll find that it does have a bearing on the question, my lord, if I may be allowed to continue with my cross-examination.
Very well, Mr. Harvester.
Thank you, my lord. Dr. Sebes, correct me now if I'm wrong. I think you said that in 1950 you were, put in charge of a research program which studied the problems of the cryogenic preservation of living cells.
Yes.
And again I quote, you had considerable success with the smaller experimental animals.
Yes.
What sort of success did you have with the larger experimental animals?
I don't know what you mean.
Oh, come now, Dr. Sebes, you can't be that naive. Well, surely the whole aim of your research program was to apply these findings of yours eventually to the human body. Did you not experiment with human beings?
At the later stages, yes. They were all volunteers.
Where was your research establishment?
In Győr.
In the town of Győr, in northwest Hungary, conveniently close to the Austrian border. What else is there in Győr, Dr. Sebes?
Just a small town.
Just a small town. With a prison. A prison containing quite a number of political prisoners. Where did your volunteers come from, Dr. Sebes?
I don't know. I asked for volunteers. They brought me volunteers.
But you didn't know where they came from. Were they by any chance wearing prison garb, Dr. Sebes?
Yes, they were convicts, criminals, scum. I gave them something worthwhile to do with their lives.
That's most commendable. After all, they were enemies of society.
Yes.
Or enemies of the state. Is it not a fact that all your so-called volunteers were political prisoners, highly expendable in the eyes of the authorities?
My lord, we are not here to debate the ethics of totalitarianism.
No, indeed, my lord. We're here to decide how much credence can be placed on the words of the accused. This freedom fighter who left his homeland 2 days before the real freedom fighting began. Why, Dr. Sebes? You were fleeing not from the Russian tanks, but from the real Hungarian patriots of Győr, who sought vengeance for their imprisoned comrades, your larger experimental animals.
They would never have understood. They wouldn't ever let me explain.
Explain to us now, Dr. Sebes. How successful were your experiments?
I made excellent progress.
How excellent?
How can you measure progress?
In simple numbers, Dr. Sebes. For example, how many of your so-called volunteers died during the progress of your experiments? How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, how many?
The authorities were demanding results. I was only carrying out orders.
As Joseph Draper was demanding results, as you were carrying out his orders?
That was 20 years ago. This time I knew exactly what I was doing.
Indeed you did, Dr. Sebes. You knew that Joseph Draper dead would mean an end to your security. You knew that a death certificate in Joseph Draper's name would be your passport to poverty. And you knew that your science fiction playroom in the cellar would ensure that the death of your benefactor would not come to light until it suited you. Oh yes, you knew what you were doing, Dr. Sebes. But then, of course, you always did.
You wish to re-examine Mr. O'Connor?
No, thank you, my lord.
Members of the jury, the body of Joseph Draper was found in a deep freeze cabinet. Cause of death, hypothermia. The body had been subjected to abnormally low temperatures. How did the body get into the deep freeze cabinet? The accused put it there. He admits that himself. Let's consider the accused, this highly qualified scientist, who, he would have us believe, found himself unable to get suitable employment in the West. But I would ask you, did he seek such employment? I submit that this is a man who had every reason to fear retribution from the real freedom fighters of Hungary who had escaped to the West. In Sanders' court, he found a sanctuary, and in Joseph Draper, a benefactor. And by preying upon Draper's fear of death, he milked his benefactor for enormous sums of money. In an estate which should now be worth well over the million mark, we can find less than £100,000. Then, with Miss Margaret Draper out of the way and power of attorney in his hand, he had no further need to keep Joseph Draper around. Yet with the old man dead, that would be the end of his game. For the money, or what was left of it, would pass to the monastery of St. John of the Cross. But Dr. Sebes had his way around that, and he made full use of it. His gift brought not suspended life, but suspended death. And that, in my belief, as I'm sure it must be in yours, is murder.
Members of the jury, this case would appear to turn on the evidence of two expert witnesses. One, a fine, upstanding, stolid member of the British medical establishment. The other, as my learned friend would clearly have us all believe, some cocky foreigner who came over here with the idea that he'd get the red carpet treatment. But let me put their qualifications another way. One expert whose knowledge and expertise stops at 15 degrees centigrade. The other, a man whose researches start where the others left off. Dr. Sebes has devoted more than 25 years to the question of suspended animation, a medical technique which could remove the fear of death from many who are suffering from terminal diseases. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard a great deal in my learned friend's cross-examination of practices which my client is alleged to have taken part in Hungary nearly 20 years ago. Now, I have no doubt that they will have both shocked and appalled you. However, I cannot stress too strongly that acts which my client was forced to commit under a totalitarian regime are no proof of guilt on these charges. Now, let us look a little closer at this allegedly evil plot. Dr. Sebes had Joseph Draper all to himself from the middle of 1961. And yet it was not until 12 years later that his devilish plan was put into operation. At any time he could have stuffed his man into the deep freeze, or a trunk for that matter, and enjoyed his ill-gotten gains. But he didn't. So why did he wait? Because my client was a scientist, a dedicated, well-trained scientist, who would not make a move until he knew what he was doing. Sergeant Condry broke the seals on the cryogenic unit. He deprived my client of the only possible chance he had of proving that the success was within his capability. As my client said, Joseph Draper could have been saved by science, but he was killed by ignorance. You have no alternative but to find him not guilty of any crime.
Now, members of the jury, you've heard all the evidence. It's now up to me to guide you on the law. Now, first of all, you must decide when Joseph Draper died. Was it while Dr. Sebes was carrying out his process, and Professor Sumpters says that it was, or did it occur when Sergeant Condry, in all innocence, opened the cabinet? Now, if you are not satisfied that Professor Sumpters, what he says is right, then the accused has no case to answer. If you are satisfied that Professor Sumpters is right, that Mr. Draper died during the course of the accused's process, then you must ask yourselves, is it murder, or manslaughter, or an accident for which there is no criminal liability? Now, it would be murder if Dr. Sebes intended Mr. Draper's death or grievous bodily injury. It would be murder if, though he did not intend death, he knew that it was highly probable that death or grievous bodily injury would follow. It would be manslaughter if he did not know that death and grievous bodily injury might follow, but was grossly negligent in not so recognizing. Now, members of the jury, you must remember that it is for the prosecution to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt. And if they have not done that, then you must find for the accused. Now, members of the jury, before I ask you to retire to consider your verdict, I must thank you for paying such close attention to this strange and complicated case. Thank you.
All stand. Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached verdicts on which you're all agreed?
Yes.
On the first count, do you find the prisoner at the bar, Karoly Sebes, guilty or not guilty on the charge of murder?
Not guilty.
Thank you. On the second count, do you find the prisoner at the bar, Karoly Sebes, guilty or not guilty on the charge of manslaughter?
Guilty.
Is that the verdict of you all?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Justice Campbell, taking into account his previous good character, sentenced Karoly Sebes to 4 years imprisonment. Next week, a chance for you to join another jury in assessing the facts when our cameras return to watch a leading case in the Crown Court.